Let's talk a bunch of different topics.
How'd her career get there?
This is a podcast with Lauren Asghari.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening. Hit that like button, leave a positive comment, or hit subscribe to get alerted when new episodes drop. All of this will help keep the project going. Thank you for your support and enjoy the episode. Welcome and thank you for joining. We are excited to have you as part of this project and part of this community. Before we begin, please note that today's episode contains discussions that may be sensitive or triggering for some listeners. If you're struggling with your mental health, we encourage you to seek support. You are not alone, and help is available. While we are joined by a licensed therapist, this conversation is for informational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional therapy. This is the Lauren Asghari podcast, How'd Her Career Get There? And my guest today is Katie Babcock. Katie is a board-approved licensed clinical professional counselor and founder of Counseling for Professionals. Beyond that, Katie is a volunteer in the community with several things. Geez, let me get my list here. Katie, you're active. Pro Bono Counseling Project, Glendon Volunteer Fire Department, is a board member for Connections, Inc., which is an equine therapy for survivors of trauma. Katie is also a former two-sport collegiate athlete and a recovering adult child of an alcoholic. And she is also an activist for the destigmatization and anti-pathologization of mental health.
Yep.
Welcome, Katie. I'm excited to have you.
Thank you. Super happy to be here.
So let's get started. I want to define a couple of the things that I talked about in your opening. But before we do that, just give kind of a quick high-level overview. What is Counseling for Professionals?
Yeah, thank you. It is my private mental health practice. I work with adult professionals navigating difficulties with burnout, trauma responses or PTSD, professionals struggling with substances, or a little bit of attention difficulties. So right now we have a lot of things happening in our world. It's April 2025. We are 5 years post-pandemic. We're also going through major administrative changes. So a lot of industry, a lot of professionals having difficulties right now. The landscape is very tumultuous. And so I work specifically with adults, a lot of adults in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. A lot of people in different academic spaces to help support them navigate the current stressors that are happening right now.
And then how is, obviously when people hear mental health, which is such an important topic, there's a lot of different segments of it. And you kind of went over your areas of expertise there. Elaborate and define for our audience, if you will, on your opening there, the destigmatization and I mess up this word, pathologization?
Anti-pathologization, yes.
Help me out on that. Define what those are.
Yeah, so destigmatization simply meaning let's come out of the closet here. Let's really just normalize that we all need help at different parts and times during our lives. And that really from decades past where, there was a lot of very unhelpful language, very unsupportive language, words like crazy, loony bin, something's wrong with that family. It's like, look, those are really, really outdated dynamics of terminology, and part of what we're looking at and part of what I do with clients is really just like normalize what you're experiencing. The anti-pathologization part, which is a big word. So pathology meaning to sort of identify something as abnormal. So we think of pathology a lot in the medical model, right? Like, oh, this thing looks different than this thing. Okay, great. That's really important. But in the mental health world, there are some similarities in the medical model, but we don't want everything to be the same. And so anti-pathologization really comes from this idea of, rather than saying somebody is disordered, there's something wrong with them, we're like, what's really normative and what's really normal about what they're experiencing. And I will maybe get to this later on, but the history of mental health and behavioral health is really, we have a pretty dark history. And pathology, meaning saying something was wrong with a woman, saying something was wrong with a African American or Black person because they just wanted basic rights, is not disordered in any way. So anti-pathology is work grounded in normalizing what the human experience is and doing that work with individuals. I am normalizing when individuals are coming in and being like, is this normal? There's got to be something wrong with me. I'm like, no, this is really a normative response to what you experience. So I think that if the audience follows that, that is the work of anti-pathologization and really normalizing the human condition.
I want to circle back to that later in the conversation. But let's get for now, just to give the audience a little bit of your story and your background. We'll get in our time machine and we'll go back to when little Katie was walking around. Give an idea of, where you're from. What was your childhood like? Only child. I obviously know the answer to some of these questions since full disclosure, you're my sister-in-law. But give the audience an idea of kind of what you were like as a kid and what your background was like growing up.
Yeah. How much time do we have, Lauren? How really real do you want me to get?
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm a therapist, so I my work is about not doing small talk. So I'll tell you. So I was a feisty kid for sure. I think a lot of people can attest to knowing me as an adult. I'm pretty outgoing. I'm pretty extroverted. I love a good adventure. As a kid, I was pretty similar. Grew up in northern Baltimore County, and the middle child of two people who did get divorced when I was 7 years old. And so that divorce in the early 90s was a pretty pivotal experience of my life. It changed a lot of things for me because a lot of things post-divorce really changed. In addition to like being feisty and adventurous, I would say I had huge parts that were very confident and willful and strong-willed. And then I had a lot of parts that were deeply, deeply insecure. In first grade, and this sort of my parents getting divorced and what I'm about to share were really pivotal moments in my life. In first grade, I didn't know it, but I couldn't hear correctly. And so like when you go to the hearing test as a kid and they're like, raise your hand, I failed that. And up until that point, I was like falling further and further behind in my first grade. And I was starting to be in like the slower reading group and feeling those differences, really wanting to do well, but like just not being able to get it. Definitely had a lot of tears at the kitchen table. And so I failed that test. And I did do Hooked on Phonics. It did work for me. If anyone remembers that commercial, I'm dating myself here, but that program worked. So from first grade to third grade, every day I would get pulled out for reading class and I would go to a specialist, and definitely insecure about that. But there was also really cool things about that. And so as I'm feeling like insecure sort of in my home life, because it had just changed drastically, and I'm feeling insecure in schoolwork, I'm leaning into athletics. And I loved sports. I love competition, soccer, softball, lacrosse, field hockey. I practiced and I got really good at those things. And so it was an area that I was able to build confidence when there was these other areas that felt very tumultuous and felt very insecure. And from like, it was called the Warren Wallabies, was the jump rope team. And we performed in front of the blast,
Oh, that's awesome.
during halftime. And we would do school performances. And so I did dance class, really anything. I was in some plays. So really anything that was like sort of using my body, I could practice and I could get good at, because that confidence wasn't building yet academically. And then that just sort of parlayed into, middle school, continuing with the sports, and then high school, continuing with sports, and like being part of a team. Full disclosure, I like team sports. Maybe as I get older, I'll go maybe that golfing route or something. I don't know, but team sports is like I just maintain it saved my life. Like it felt like a team. It felt like family. I was definitely the kid who like got my mom or dad to sign the permission slip. And then I'd walk into the school on registration day. This is pre, signing up online. I'd walk my permission slip to school on registration day. And then I'd walk myself to games and practices. So in addition to the team feel of it, I learned how to organize myself. I learned how to I got to get ready to go to practice and get my uniform, and I forgot my jersey at my dad's house. And, it was, sports just helped me in so many ways. Loved and still love everything about sports.
What do you, when you were a kid, did you think like, I always air quote this when I ask the question, but I want to be X when I grow up, like career wise? Like what did you aspire to anything when you were younger?
I did for a little bit. I wanted to be an actress. And I think when I think back on that, was it like I wanted to be famous? Like, did I want to be like Full House, like DJ Tanner or Stephanie, right? Like that seems so glamorous. And I did do a couple plays at elementary school, but I think also maybe it was about story. Like I liked reading about a character and like pretending to be something that I wasn't. So I don't know how long that lasted, but I sort of think being a therapist lends itself to like, I get to learn about people. I get to hear about characters and hear about stories that it's almost like reading a book that I'm not reading. Like somebody tells me about their world and I'm like, oh, go on. And like next chapter. And that sort of, I think it was an actress, maybe an athlete a little bit too. Like this was like the Cal Ripken 21-31 era. And like, that was so cool. That was such a big thing in Baltimore for people who are listening outside of Baltimore. That was like a really big deal in my lifetime. And so that was really inspiring too. It's like, I always looked to athletes like Jackie Joyner-Kersee at that time and like FloJo during the Olympics. Mm-hmm. The dream team, the gymnastics dream team. So those were also like people I looked up to and things I wished I would have been able to do or wished I could do.
What were some of the traits, and you can say it from your parents as individuals or collectively or other people that were part of your life as you were a kid growing up, but what were some of the traits and from whom did you get them? Like one or two traits that you carry with you that have served you throughout your life that you distinctly remember feeling like I learned that from this person?
Yeah. So from my mom, she is like slow and steady wins the race. Like she is extremely patient. She is very consistent. And she's very loyal. And so I don't think it has been until the past 10 years where I've really understood that, and really understood how important it was for her to be those things as a mother of children. And I really, really appreciate that sort of like the reliability, the consistency, I think. And she was in billing and administration and finance. And so I really appreciate like the slow and steady wins the race. Like we don't have to be flashy. We don't have to jump around. Like their consistency and reliability are really, really wonderful things. And then my father So my father was an athlete, and you sort of mentioned it in my intro. My father got sober. He was I think he's about 35 or 36 years sober now. Sorry, forget. But he got sober when I was relatively young. And I think part of his recovery and his trying to heal himself was he leaned into sports. So he did marathons and triathlons and, 5Ks and 10Ks. And so body activation and body activation is a fancy word for just moving your body. That's the clinical term for it.
Yeah, that's the theatrical part of you.
Right. He just oh man, we would have push-up contests, my brother, my sister and I, and we're all 4 years apart. It's not really a contest when your 4-year-old brother, your brother is 4 years older than you and your sister is 4 years younger than you. But it's he was just boosting our self-confidence. And we would we would have little sprint races, or we would play this game called it's like a baseball game, and sort of running as fast as you can between bases and not getting tagged. So he definitely inspired movement and confidence through movement. And he also, my father is the truest social engineer you can imagine. He does not like to follow rules. They don't apply to him. But what that also means is you can figure out how to get places where maybe you don't have a ticket, or how to go into rooms and not know somebody and walk out with 3 business cards. So from a really young age, he helped us create a sense of belonging. Probably as a kid, we were Dad, no, we're gonna get in trouble. He's let's move it. So those are a couple of things for my father. And I definitely want to also mention my stepfather as well, because he came into my life when I was in middle school, and he too, similar to my mother, which is probably why they are married, really, really consistent, and really reliable, and just always in a supportive, good mood. That is something that I appreciate, is laughter and a good mood can go a long way. So those are in my parents, those are definitely things I draw from.
And then, so as we move forward throughout your life, so you're one of 3 growing up, you go to college, collegiate athlete, you study what in college, and then where do you go college to what when you finish?
Yeah. So my major was psychology. I do feel pretty grateful that as a human, I've been pretty clear about what I wanted to do. It was not I just sort of knew that I wanted to be a therapist. I liked working with people.
When was that? Not to cut you off, but
Yeah.
when did that hit you? Was that in college? When you're 10 years old, do you know what a therapist is? Or what was there a moment distinctly that you remember, I want to do that?
I don't think that there was a moment, but I can look back on my life, and this is behind the scenes of most therapists. I'm telling what's going on for most therapists. So most of us, myself included, grew up in environments where we probably had to be the caretaker in some way. And so being that I come from a family where my father was struggling with addiction in my younger years, and also having a larger family where there's a lot of addiction and untreated mental health difficulties, creates environments that can be confusing, creates environments where there can be some chaos, some volatility, we're true latchkey kids, because after my parents divorced, they both went back to work. So a lot of, taking care of myself. And so it's not to say that my parents weren't there. It was just the circumstances changed, and there was a lot of life lessons that I learned, or me and my siblings learned, that we just sort of learned through trial and error. And when you're growing up in an environment where there is active substance use or abuse or active untreated mental illness, that can be scary. That can be vulnerable. And like some of the best coping skills are like figure out what's going on in the room.
Mhm.
Like get really good at detecting what's safe and what's not safe, who is safe and who's not safe. And get really good at like the people that you're identifying as unsafe, get really good at like getting them safer or more emotionally stable. So my interest in figuring people out, and I think at a young age, it was figuring them out. So like I could get to safety. Like, how do I figure this out so I can get to safety? My experience has sort of created some skill sets. And at the time, sort of late high school and early college, it was just very interesting to me to learn about what people were struggling with, learn about what that looked like, what that sounded like. And I think the curiosity is also like, you're not that different though. Like we are not that different. And so at the time when there's a lot more pathology, so late 90s, early 2000s, I'm just using my lived experience. That's not the beginning of pathology.
Sure.
It was just very interesting to me. And I was like, we're sort of cut from the same cloth though. We're both humans. So how did this sort of like get really difficult? And that's really sort of my survival skills growing up as a kid turned into like really good access to be a therapist of like what's going on, observation, wanting somebody to feel supported, wanting somebody to feel cared for. And the other thing about therapists is, I mean, I can't speak for all of us, but like a lot of us like become the people that we needed as kids.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in a lot of ways, I try and like with my nieces and my like younger cousins, I really try and be like a stable, reliable, fun, consistent person for them.
Oh, you fit that. Love it, Katie. Love it, Katie. So then you graduate college and take us through your kind of a abbreviated work experience of how you go from college to where you are today.
Yeah. So I started my mental health career, like my post-college at Shepherd Pratt. So for people who don't know Shepherd Pratt, who are not from Maryland, Shepherd Pratt is the largest nonprofit behavioral health system in the United States. So, and they employed now, I think it's like up to 5,000 people. So I started working there, working in their high school and in their residential treatment programs. And that was a really wonderful experience. A lot of client populations, what we call like short-term and long-term. Working at the high school was working with teenage or adolescents who would not be able to or could not thrive in a what we call like a traditional classroom setting. So really small classrooms, 4 to 7 people. And I really, really loved working with adolescents because they just like give it to you so straight. And what I learned there is that a bachelor's degree in psychology is not enough to make a living in the mental health world. So I was able to get some experience, and also I was exposed to working to like every sort of iteration of the mental health occupational field. So social workers, psychiatrists, psychologists, behavioral health technicians. And during that year or two where I was there, I would just sort of like ask people like, hey, can I ask you about your job? And what do you like about it? What don't you like about it? And I was able to determine like I did officially want to be like a therapist as opposed to like a social worker. And so I then went to graduate school in California. So that was in 2006. And I went to a graduate school that was very, I mean, I could say it's very California. Like, it's called a depth psychology program. So looking at human experience through like mythology and dream and Carl Jung or Jungian principles, like looking at like the collective experience, the environmental experience to understand like how an individual navigates the world. Cause we're not just these like bots, like we're influenced by everything. Did that. And there, I had a really wonderful internship experience. I worked at a 90-day treatment facility for women who were struggling with substances. And that was probably, that was my first experience in like a binary gendered treatment program, and sort of got to see women progress and understand the differences of women struggling with substances and how that's different than men who struggle with substances, that there's different experiences that sort of binary men and women dynamic experience. And so that was great. I did really well there. I love that. I got promoted to the head residential counselor at their long-term program. I really appreciated all my leadership there. And then I graduated. I wrote my thesis and my dissertation on the 12 steps and alchemy, and graduated in 2009. And following that, I went back to Shepherd Pratt, and this is sort of like a business dynamic / just sort of where I was in my life. I went back to Shepherd Pratt, and I was making a minuscule amount more than I was with a bachelor's degree. And so that was actually incredibly like disheartening, because what maybe the audience doesn't know is that for therapists in the United States, not everything is transferable from state to state. So like social work, there's a little bit more transferability, like teachers, there's a little bit more transferability, lawyers, but in the therapy world, there's not as much. So I got back to Baltimore and was informed that I had to take a lot more classes, which was pretty deflating. And so at that point, between sort of like being this caregiver my whole life, being really excited to go into the workforce and really couldn't, and I already had 6 figures worth of student loans, I think I was just burnt out. Mm-hmm. And so I pivoted over to academia, and I was about a year or two in admissions. And then I went into hospitality, which I also really liked because it was like clock in and clock out. Like it's that also fast paced. You're moving your body. It's fun. The underbelly of the restaurant industry or hospitality is that it is all parts motivating, energetic, and chaotic. And so I loved it. So, went into that, I would say, for like a handful of years. And then I was like, okay, I spent all this time, I'm paying back all this money. Let me pursue my licensure and going back to being a therapist. And so have been doing that now for, I guess, 10, 12, 15 years. And I really, really like it. I specialize in trauma now, whereas in the past I would say like I'm more general. But being in private practice or working in a private practice for a long time made me realize like, oh, I can do this. I didn't really ever have any desire to open my own practice, but like, here we are. And it's opening a private practice has, like, my sports foundation has really sort of lended itself. It's like, what's the next thing? Okay, now what's the next thing? Now what's the next thing? Okay, and let's just keep getting good at it and keep getting good at it. And so here we are.
What do you think for May is Mental Health Month, right?
Yeah.
What the importance of women in business supporting their mental health and seeking mental health services? Talk a little bit about that, how important that is, how maybe it's overlooked, not to make broad generalizations about gender or stereotype, but I think a lot of people would say that women have a tendency to put other people's needs before their own.
Yeah.
So just elaborate on the value of that and importance of it.
Yeah. I just also want to say thank you for your company and How Did Her Career Get There, highlighting this as May as Mental Health Month and having me come on. I think the more organizations, businesses, firms that are not just recognizing it, but really like, okay, how do we engage with mental health? I think is so important. So thank you, How Did Her Career Get There, and Outers and Loop. So yeah, you talked a little bit about it, this sort of like broad generalization. And I think it's pretty almost like what we call like archetypal, which is like it sort of expands throughout time. So women or girls being sort of normalized or taught we're caregivers, we're loving, we're kind, we take care of others. And that's wonderful. That's really, really wonderful. I just don't know that the lessons of like, but also you have to take care of yourself first. Like as adults, we're taught that, but I don't think we're taught that as girls so much as those other lessons. And so
I feel like we almost learn it as adults versus we're taught it. It's almost like we learn it out of, oh shit, like something's not right, because it's like you figure it out the hard way versus, you reach adulthood and somebody's like, oh, now you have to take care of yourself first. It's like you just reach that burnout stage, whether you work out of your house or work somewhere else, or mom, aunt, sister, whatever, just the combination. But anyway, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, that's 100%, Lauren. Like, I often think we learn those lessons through an event, like something has been going on for so long where we're like, oh, okay, this is no longer sustainable. Now I have to actually learn how to do it differently. And ultimately that differently is like, oh, I didn't know I could say no, or I didn't know that I could advocate or negotiate for myself. And I do, to your point, I think we stumble into it, we trip into it, or like we get injury into it. So I talk a lot about burnout with my clients, and it's like, typically we start to learn how to take care of ourselves after an event, a medical difficulty, like we can no longer do our job anymore, an ailment that we just can't seem to recover from. And we have to like categorically look at our life and be like, whoa, like this is unsustainable. So lending itself to women in business, there's a lot of things at play, but I think the foundation is that taking care of ourselves first and foremost, like we're sort of saying, it's like it doesn't come naturally. We are taught to be considerate of others. And that's wonderful. But we have to also be considerate with ourselves. And so my work with clients is about rebuilding a relationship with themselves. Like, it's like, I understand that all of these other things, your kindness, your motivation, your proactivity are values for you, right? So we're not devaluing that. We want to add another value, which is the value of yourself, the value of your health. And a lot of times, and I'll sort of like speak clinically here a little bit, like people who are perfectionists or like ultra independent, or like I can do it all myself, I would suspect that they had to at many points in their life. So ultra independence likely, I can't say for sure, but like a trauma response, like I can't depend on people, so I'm just going to have to figure all of this out on my own. People pleasing, which I think a lot of people know what that is, but I also tend to think of it through a trauma perspective. Like, if I can please you, you can be safe, then I can feel safe. So a trauma response, or what we call like a threat response. And then also like I can do it all, like the inability to delegate. I also think that comes from, it can come from a place of not having reliable resources in the past to be like, can you help me out? Or can I count on you to do this thing? And when you don't have that, when you don't have reliable resources, like just like pull yourself up by the bootstraps and assume you can't ask for help, or assume other people won't help you. And I think that's exhausting. Like there's a ceiling for that. And I think women are susceptible, like how burnout shows up is it can be cognitively, it could be like neurologically, GI issues, neurological issues, injury, and ultimately there is help for that. Like we can prevent burnout and we can recover from burnout, like mental health and therapy being one of those ways. But I also like to remind people like recovery from trauma or therapy or recovering from burnout is not like a hurry up, kid, we got to get you back into the game and do it the same way you did it before. It's like, nope. There's a reason why you're burnout. There are systemic things happening. Systemic meaning like there's a lot of things happening that are influencing this. This is not like an efficiency issue. It's not a productivity issue. It's like there's probably been a lot of things for a long time that have been very overwhelming, and we want to help with that. And so for women, and it being Mental Health Month, I just sort of want to remind like, gentle, sweet babies, like there is help. You don't have to do it all by yourself, and there's support out there for you. I know many therapists, and we are all trying to support people. And it's you don't have to live in like a dysregulated nervous system or a nervous system that's constantly in fight and flight or exhaustion, or should we call like meltdown or freeze. So
do most of your patients, or in your experience, I should say, do people typically get to that point where it is like, okay, now I've had, and maybe it's not even like response to a previous trauma that they're aware of, right? That's probably a more, air quoting, obvious place for people, right? I went through this traumatic thing recently. I know that I need help working through it. But for people that are maybe more in their day-to-day life, do they come to you with okay, I'm having these physical ailments, or I don't know, I have, I look at therapy like I look at the gym. It's just something that I should do to stay ahead of things? Or do people really have like things that have triggered them to the point where they feel like they need professional help? And I guess it varies for everyone. Part two of that question is, where along that path should people be considering talking with someone?
Yeah. So I do, to your point, I think it's all of the above. So I work with a lot of high achieving women, and a lot of those women also, like their achievement, their intelligence, their work ethic are the thing that saved them. So they are high achieving, but a lot of them also had what we call like adverse childhood experiences. So abuse, trauma, unreliable or financial vulnerability. And maybe the thing that was like the one reliable thing in their life was like academics, like school was their escape, reading was their escape. And they were able to get confidence and start to build identity through just completely going all in on school or sports. And so in a lot of ways, it's like this wonderful one, like it's a life-saving, like fight or flight response. Like they're feeling super vulnerable in many areas, but they like go all in. They fight for their academia. They fight for their sport. They fight for the thing that they're really good at. But if they don't develop other skills along the way, if they don't develop like the ability to calm their nervous system down, which, to be clear, has to be taught. We are not born with calm nervous systems. So all children and animals, we have to do what's called co-regulation. So, if one of your children comes up to you and goes like, Mom, I'm so scared. Like, if you meet them with that same level of fear, you are co-regulating. Your little mirror neurons are telling them it is time to be scared now, right? But if one of them comes up to you, it's like, oh, I'm so scared. And you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Can you tell me a little bit more? Your little mirror neurons are firing to them and saying like, it's okay that you're scared. We're going to be calm now. It's okay to be calm. So when children grow up with these adverse childhood experiences, and they don't have that co-regulation, their little nervous systems, which turn into their adult nervous systems, don't actually know how to calm themselves down. And they don't have boundaries. They don't know how to say no, because lots of the things that maybe they're being asked to do are for their profession or are for their place of employment. And like, that is a really good place for them where they have a strong sense of confidence. They have a strong sense of identity. So they don't know how to say no. And they don't have other identity or other confidence in other areas. Maybe they have unstable or unhealthy relationships. So they're like, yes, I'll work 40 hours, no, not 40, 50, 60 hours, right? They just like keep saying yes. And so, yes, when they come to me, it can be, I always remind clients like, look, like you are answering a calling inside of yourself. Like you didn't know who I was. I'm not this magical, like I don't have like a fairy wand. Like, so the genesis of like help is often coming from them. Like they've noticed it for a while. They think they need some support. They're sort of looking around their relationships, or they're looking at, you know, their world, that they have difficulty saying no, that they need to make more money, that they're in an unhealthy work environment. And they're sort of like, okay, I think I need help. And growing up in those types of environments that I'm sort of highlighting a little bit lends itself to not know how to like be in relationship with your body. So there's a lot of compartmentalization. So then what that looks like as we get older is ailments, neurological issues, memory difficulties, autoimmune difficulties, GI difficulties. So, you know, often like somebody will be like, yeah, I'm having these GI issues, but I'm like working 60 hours, but those two things aren't related. And I'm like, I assure you they are. You know, we can't max our body out. And then when our body is physically having difficulties, think that it has nothing to do with the maxing itself out. It's like, no, these are in relationships. So a lot of my work with clients is what I call relational. It's like, I don't have like a 10-week plan. Like, we're going to get you out your way. Like I do more longer term treatment. And so it's relationship building. Like if somebody's had trauma, they have difficulty with trust. They have difficulty with trust in themselves and difficulty with trust in others. And that takes time.
If you could get in your time machine and give your younger self some advice, what would that be?
It's a hard one for me because I wouldn't be where I am today without all of the missteps and pivots and things along the way. I would certainly, I think I wrote a little bit of this down here because I was like, let me make sure I remember these. It took me a long time to get licensed. So professionally, I wish I would have known earlier on like state reciprocity and licensure dynamics as it relates to being a therapist. So you can have a master's degree in counseling psychology, but you can't work with clients. So I wish when I was in grad school, though I was young, that I understood that, and I just didn't. So that's just like I was young. Personally, I wish I would have loved myself. I wish I would have known how to love myself and fully love myself a lot earlier in life. At the same time, like it happened when it happened, and here I am, and I understand what like being in a loving relationship with myself and listening to my body is now, as opposed to like, you know, being in unhealthy relationships or not listening to my body and just like keep pushing.
What would you have said to yourself though? Like you come face to face with 24-year-old Katie, or to the 24-year-old out there listening to this. And it's hard, right? Because sometimes it's like you don't, you almost have to live through it to get it. But if but what would you have said to yourself beyond, like, what does love yourself mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Love yourself is like really gently listening and responding to self. So like, this is a supportive decision. This decision is going to bring you pain. And I don't know if I would have believed me at 24, but I certainly, if somebody were saying like, this is going to get real painful. I probably, if I had had that warning, probably would have listened differently. So to any 24-year-old listening, I would definitely say you've lived through some experiences already, and that you don't have to do it alone. That there is help, and if that help can't be your family or friends, which for many people it can't, to find a counselor, to find a social worker, or find a therapist who can help you, and to also stick with it, because therapy and true healing takes a long time. There's not like a 6 weeks, we got to get you back on your feet. It's like, no, it's going to take time. So I think probably maybe telling myself also stay with the therapist. Like, I'm pro therapy. I always have been, but like there were times where I was like in and out. Probably would have said like, just stay, just keep it a standing appointment for the rest of your life.
It's funny that you say that, because you've said like that stick with it thing, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, and or maybe my brain's just like attaching to it, because I was in therapy and I remember like my natural personality is like I'm a task oriented person. So to me, I'm kind of like, okay, this, and I don't need an exact thing, but like, is this a 3-month thing? Is this a 6-month thing? Like, what's the thing till this is behind me? And it was just a really interesting, and I would say probably around my early 30s, I got like, it was, I can't remember what happened. It was like all of my, like just self-consciousness, just, it went away. I just felt very confident in my decisions and just very confident in a whole lot of things. But anyway, all that to say that it clicked with me like, a couple of years ago, this like, oh, you just kind of have to like go through it. Like, it's not about just getting to the end of it. It's like going through it is kind of where, like, accept that that's it. Don't just look for the end destination to then move on to whatever the next thing is. So you've said that a couple of times, and every time you say it, I'm like, the universe is telling me again.
It's, I think there's a reason probably why you think that, Lauren. I think there's a reason why a lot of people think that. Like, I mean, there's billion-dollar industries that tell us like, here's the fix. So I think we are primed to, like, both from like a marketing industry standpoint, as well as like an instinctual, like, don't touch the stove again. Like, what's the issue? And I think, and I think with healing and growth, if we think of it more as growth as opposed to like, where's the Band-Aid? Give me the Band-Aid. Has it healed? I think that's I think that's an okay way to think of therapy. At the same time, it's like, I want to keep growing. I want to keep understanding myself. And actually, when I work with clients, what I say to them is, it's like, I'm not interested in following the medical model. Like, the medical model is, you have a broken arm. Let's get you surgery. Let's get you a cast. Let's get you rehab. Do your PT. You're out of here. I'll see you hopefully never again. I want to get to places with clients where, like, okay, yeah, they're struggling. There are discernible things that we want to work on and explore. But I'm super interested in, like, like, what's it like to be living a life where you're feeling super confident, where you have boundaries, where you just negotiated a new thing in your line of work? Like, what does that feel like? What is, like, feeling like I can do anything feel like? Like, I don't want to end when somebody's like, reach my goals. I'm like, but who are you as this person? Like, I want to learn all about her or him. And so I think that's where I think from that growth model, not just like it's a recovery, but it's also like, and then how are you growing? Because I think as we get older, as new dynamics happen in our life, like we're forever in a new place.
What in your industry, a handful of questions more. What in your industry is the best part about your job, and what's the underbelly, or what people don't talk about or don't like to talk about? And you can answer it through the lens of therapy or owning a business, whichever.
I think it's a little bit of both. There's quite a bit of an underbelly in my field. I'll sort of like high, broad stuff. actual determinants of burnout. So most people in general could understand why therapists experience burnout. So that's like a really big risk in my world. And I think the general public is like, oh yeah, you're like listening to like trauma, you're listening to really difficult circumstances. That actually has very little to do with burnout. The burnout and the underbelly of what's happening in like behavioral health is that it is unsustainable. There are gaping holes in the system. So we are highly, highly trained. We have to go to school long periods of time. We have to have extensive clinical experience. We have to continue our clinical experience throughout our career. Yet we are really, really underpaid. And the determinants of how we are being paid are ultimately like large private insurance companies. And so there's a lot of therapists, mental health workers, and social workers who are burning out because the systems are unsustainable. It's not necessarily the work. Like we're trained to deal with that. But like when you're in a system that is pushing you to see more clients, increasing your clinical documentation, that is only going to promote burnout. And then you got to do like my job. Like I can't dial it in. Like I can't be like, you know what? I've got 7 clients today. I'm just like, we're just going to cruise through this day. It's like, no, I could miss something. Like, so it's a very, very present centered field or career. And so burnout is a very real dynamic of my field. There are major multi-billion-dollar corporations coming in and creating landscapes that for the individual therapists are unsustainable. So they're these large corporations are able to go to insurance companies, say, we're going to hire thousands of therapists, negotiate rates, but those rates are also unsustainable for the therapists. So the corporations do a lot of the administrative work, a lot of the billing work, but the rate that you're being reimbursed as a therapist is often not sustainable. So again, we have this like, so you have to really increase your caseload. It's like, well, you can only see so many people per week. Like, you know, you can't see 40 clients in a week. That's like not sustainable. And then a little bit of what I touched upon, which is the history of behavioral health and mental health is really dark and full of a lot of abuse, a lot of control of minorities. And we are still experiencing the effects of that abuse and the effects of that control today. So for example, like I'll often say to clients, I specialize in trauma, like post-traumatic stress disorder, so PTSD. I just call it PTS, post-traumatic stress. Like it is not disordered. Like it is the most natural response to a stressful situation for your brain to sort of shut off, compartmentalize, go into fight and flight or go into freeze. It's like, that's not disordered. There's something wrong with that order, so to speak. It's like, that's what most nervous systems do, unless you're like trained for it not to, unless you work for a 3-letter agency or you're high-ranking military. So we have a lot of work in our field to step into normalizing the human experience, as opposed to we need more disorders to describe the human experience.
And what's like the thing that invigorates you every day about your job?
This might choke me up because it's real. Like people come into my office really in a lot of pain and don't have a lot of relationships from their past where they could rely on people, where they could trust people, where their needs were met. And it's so cool to see people like step by step, one, like I always say, like bite size. We're not climbing Kilimanjaro. We're like have a boundary with your coworker, right? Say, can you put your headphones on and turn that music off, right? Like it's just these very small bite-size components of growth, and seeing people love themselves in that way, be able to say no, to be able to advocate for themselves, to be able to recognize that they deserve love and that they need it. Like, it's just the coolest thing to see. Like it, I always tell my clients, like whenever they transition, or let's say I leave a place, I'm always like, look, I know I'm your therapist, but like you came into my life too. Like in this life, I got to have you as a client. And like that sort of chokes me up, because like I get to like hear people's like hardest parts and then see them recover from them. And I feel grateful as a human being that in my life experience, like how cool I got to know this person, or how cool I got to hear this person's journey. And it's like I said, it's like reading a book. Like I feel so privileged and grateful that like people want to do that with me, sort of walking beside them.
What a great response. What a great response. I have one more question before I get to rapid fire, which is unrelated to what we talked about. But before I ask that, is there anything else that you want to cover that we haven't covered?
I just think in general, like, look, I'm a therapist. I'm so advocate for therapy all day, every day. I've told my therapist, see ya until one of us passes away. Like, I'm on your calendar. I also like sharing that, like 10 years ago, therapists sharing that they were seeing therapists was like not a thing. But I consider it like part of my advocacy work to normalize going to therapy. So if you're struggling, if you're not struggling, if you're like, I'd like to work with somebody, I'd like to look at these different parts, I'd like to explore this a little bit more, go to therapy. If you don't like that therapist, if it's not a good fit, that doesn't mean that therapy is not for you. It just might be it's not a good fit. It's like going to a gym once and not liking that gym and being like, I'm never going to a gym again. It's like, there's a million gyms. Try a new one. So, talking with a therapist, and I think also like foundationally, like moving your body, we heal trauma through our bodies. So moving your body is always a good way to support yourself and love yourself.
And what is the best way for someone to get in touch with you? They listen to this podcast and they think, Katie's awesome. I've got to talk to her, or I know somebody that I think might be able to talk with her. What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I probably go in the show notes, but you can go to my website, which is counselingforprofessionals.com. You can email me directly. So kbabcock@counselingforprofessionals.com. And then I'm also on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me in any of those ways. I'm pretty reachable. So feel free to reach out.
Perfect. And we will definitely link all that up in the show notes too. All right. Before rapid fire, final question. How do you define success?
Success for me, because I only can define it for myself, is having more of my day lived in a calm, regulated nervous system than it being in fight, flight, or freeze. So I spent many years in fight, flight, and freeze, in action orientation, and had a real difficulty relaxing. And so I work on it every single day. I naturally wake up and I'm like, my brain is like, oh. And so I work diligently to be in a calm nervous system, to be present, to be relaxed, to have creativity and fun in my life. And so success for me is like when I look at my day or look at my week, if I'm able to be like, that was fun. Like I had a good time. I was able to be present. I loved that conversation with that person. Or if I'm with my nieces and we're doing something fun, I'm like fully present. I'm not thinking about work. I'm not thinking about chores. I'm like, we're in it. So for me, it's all about like my own nervous system and being more in a calm state and less in a fight and flight or freeze state.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to go to rapid fire, unrelated to anything we talked about. So just whatever comes top of mind.
Okay.
Sky or grass?
You're bringing the heat, Lauren. I'm a tree hugger. I love it all. Sky or grass? Grass.
Brick or stone?
Brick.
Nervous system is not computing. Hot or cold?
Ooh. Cold. If you asked me 10 years ago, it would have been hot. It's now cold.
What did you say to brick or stone? Brick?
Brick. Yep.
East Coast, West Coast? We've stumped
This
her,
is
ladies and gentlemen.
so hard. This is so hard. East.
Snow or sand?
Sand.
Astronaut or deep sea diver?
Astronaut.
And if you could only have one utensil for the rest of your life, would it be a spoon or a fork?
100% for the rest of my life, spoon.
Not even hesitating. Look at that confidence.
I love spoons. I love bowls and I love spoons. The more food we can put in bowls and eat with spoons, the better.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. That is funny. I was thinking a fork might at least give a little thought. Like if you get something hard, then you have the dull edge of the spoon, but who knows? All right. So spoon it is.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a guest. I mean, obviously I know you, so I know how amazing and wonderful you are. And I'm glad that you joined to share your gift with the rest of the world. So
thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being part of this. And, to anyone in the audience, again, Katie Babcock is the guest. She is the founder of Counseling for Professionals. We'll link up in the show notes how to get in touch and learn more about her business and her industry. So, Katie, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
If you're struggling or need support, please know that you are not alone. Help is available. You can call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or dial 211 to connect with local resources and support services in your area.
Let's talk a bunch of different topics.
How'd her career get there?
This is a podcast with Lauren Ascari.